The paper plates were still warm with barbecue grease when my father raised his glass and called me a disgrace in front of 40 people. My name is Meredith Frost. I was 34 years old, standing at the edge of my own family's Father's Day table. He lifted his sweet tea like a toast and said he was proud of all his children. Then he looked right at me and added, "Except the disgrace sitting at this table." Nobody argued. Nobody even looked up, so I did not argue either. I smiled, set a plain manila envelope down beside his plate, wished him a happy Father's Day and walked to my car. I had reached the end of the gravel drive, engine idling while I waited for a truck to pass, when the screen door banged and my father started to scream. The neighbours came out onto their porches, but to understand what was inside that envelope, you have to go back 5 years to the day my mother died, and beyond that, to a secret I had carried completely alone for 2 years. That morning, before any of it, I was sitting in my CPA office in Cedar Hollow with a client's shoebox of receipts and a pot of coffee gone cold. I had built that practice from a card table and a second-hand laptop, one tax season at a time, 12 years of it. Nobody handed me a thing. I tell you that not to brag, but so you understand the kind of person my family had decided I was. Cold, selfish, the daughter who chose ledgers over love. I looked at the calendar. Father's Day. I had circled it weeks ago and pretended I had not. 40 minutes to the homestead, 40 minutes back. A whole afternoon of being talked about instead of talked to. I told myself every year that I would not go. And every year I went, because the woman who raised me would have wanted me there, and because I had unfinished business with that house that none of them knew about. The drive out to the family farm has not changed in my lifetime. 2-lane road, then gravel. Then the white fence my grandfather painted the summer he came home from Korea. The Frost place had been in the family 3 generations, 80 acres, a barn that leaned a little to the south, the farmhouse where my father was born, and a live oak in the side yard my mother had planted the year she married into the family. She used to say a family is like that tree. You cannot see most of what holds it up. I came around the last bend and there it was, strung with flags, cars parked in the cut hay, smoke rolling off 2 grills. I parked at the far end of the lane, past everybody, the way you park when some part of you is always ready to leave early. I checked my purse. The tin box was still inside, where I had put it that morning without quite letting myself ask why. I had carried that box around for 2 years. Today, for the first time, I had brought it back to the place it came from. I did not know yet that by sundown, everyone at that table would understand exactly what it meant. My older brother Travis, 38, met the guests at the gate like he owned it, shaking hands, clapping backs, pointing people toward the coolers like a man giving a tour of his estate. His wife Sandra worked the other end, refilling tea and saying things just loud enough. "We're so glad the people who actually show up came today," she said, smiling at me. Aunt Lorna sat in the shade like a judge, certain of everything, and when she saw me, her mouth went flat the way it does when she finds a stain on a tablecloth. My father stood by the head of the table, tall and grey, and gave me a nod so small it could have been a twitch. I carried a devilled egg plate to the table, because that is what you do with your hands when no one offers you a chair. And I watched, because that is my profession really, watching where the numbers do not add up. Travis leaned down and said something low into my father's ear, and my father listened and nodded slow and serious, the way you nod at a thing you have already half decided. You do not become the disgrace overnight. It takes one bad season and a room full of frightened people. 5 years ago, my mother was dying in the front bedroom and the farm was drowning. The mortgage was 3 payments behind, the equipment loans were worse, and Travis had a plan. An investment, a sure thing, a man he knew with a feedlot deal that would clear the debt by spring. All he needed was for our father to pull equity out of the homestead to get in. I asked questions. That was all I did at first. I brought a folder, 2 nights of careful projections showing what the deal would cost if it failed. My father took it, looked at it for 1 second, and set it face down on the dresser without reading a word. "We don't need your spreadsheets, Meredith. We need faith." And there it was, the line that drew itself between me and the rest of them. Clean as a fence post. 2 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday, I drove out to check on my father because the winter had been hard, and he was not answering the phone. He let me in, gruff, and went back to his chair. I made coffee in the kitchen where I learned to make coffee, and while the pot ran, I saw a stack of mail shoved under the Sunday paper, the way you hide something you cannot throw away. The top envelope had a bank's name in the corner and a line of red print across the front. Second notice. I did not touch it. I did not need to. I had spent 12 years reading other people's financial panic professionally. I was not going to miss it on my own father's kitchen table. I brought him his coffee and said carefully, "Dad, if the place is in trouble, I can look at it." "No charge, just let me see." He did not even turn his head. "The place is fine." I handled it. Travis and I handled it. The win landed where it always landed, on the son who stayed and the daughter who counted. I left it alone because pushing would only get me sent home faster. But I sat in my car at the end of that lane for a long time. A man who has handled it does not hide the second notice under the newspaper. Something was wrong with the farm, and my father would rather lose it than let me help. The week after I saw that notice, I went to see Walt Harrove, a real estate attorney who had been practicing in town since before I was born, and who had drawn up the deed when my parents married. I asked him plainly what was happening to the farm. He told me the mortgage had gone past saving. The bank had already charged off the loan and bundled it for sale. The homestead was weeks from being listed at auction, and my father had told no one. Not Travis, not Aunt Lorna, not a soul. He would rather lose 3 generations of family land in silence than admit he could not hold it. I asked Walt the question that changed everything. If the bank has already given up on the note, can a third party buy it? Can someone just step in and purchase the debt? He told me yes. Legal, quiet, and if done right, the bank does not care who writes the cheque. I want you to understand what it cost, because nothing about this was a gift that fell out of the sky. I had spent 12 years building my practice into something worth a little money. I had a retirement account I had fed since I was 22. I had an office building paid down to a sliver of what I owed on it. To buy that note, I borrowed against the office, drained most of the retirement, and emptied the savings I had kept for the rainy day every farm kid is raised to fear. We did it clean. Walt set up a trust to hold the note and the recorded lien on the property with terms I dictated. On paper, the trust simply became the new lender, the new name the bank's old loan answered to, and I put the whole thing into forbearance. No payments demanded, no collection, the debt frozen in place. My father would go on living in that house exactly as he always had. No rent, no notice, no knock at the door. The bank got its cheque and walked away, and the auction that was weeks from destroying my family simply never happened. As far as the world was concerned, my father had handled it. He even started believing it himself. And I let him, because the alternative was to walk into that house and say I saved you and watch his face curdle. Being saved by the disgrace would have been worse to him than losing the land. So I told no one. I drove home that night a great deal poorer and carrying a secret heavier than the debt itself, and I did it for a reason I had not said out loud yet. The reason was in a tin box. I should also tell you something none of them ever learned. My mother died that April before the corn was in, and at the funeral my Aunt Lorna told 3 different women that I cared more about money than my own mother. Travis stood at the casket with his hand over his heart, the beautiful son who had tried to save the farm, while his sister sat home with her calculator. He cried beautifully. He always could. What none of them knew was that my mother spent her last 6 weeks in a hospice bed at home with a nurse 3 days a week, and the good pain medicine that insurance fights you on.
Somebody paid for that.
Not my father, who had nothing left but pride and acreage. Not Travis, who was busy chasing money he had already lost. I paid it quietly, every invoice through a billing address that was not mine so no one would ask. I held my mother's hand the night she died, and she knew, even if no one else did, which of her children had counted and which one had shown up. "Except the disgrace," my father would say years later, lifting his glass. He had no idea he was toasting the woman who had buried his wife with dignity. At the party, I watched Travis steer the neighbours and cousins on a slow loop of the property, talking about the farm with the easy pride of ownership. "When Dad finally hangs it up," he said loud enough to carry, "we've got plans. Bring the whole operation into the modern age." Sandra walked beside him, nodding at every word. I drifted close enough to refill my tea and caught the tail of it. Travis telling a cousin that the transfer was almost done, just a few signatures left, getting everything squared away so there would be no mess later. People who plan to inherit a farm honestly do not talk about avoiding a mess. They talk about the harvest. The word that kept snagging in my mind was almost. A man in a hurry to sign papers is a man afraid of what happens if he waits. I came back toward the party for a piece of pie, and that is when I saw it. Travis had drawn my father away from the crowd, around the side of the house by the propane tank, where people go to talk without being heard. I stopped at the corner with a paper plate in my hand, invisible the way I had been invisible all day. Travis had a folder open against the side of the house and was holding out a pen. "Just here, Dad, and here where the tabs are, just so it's all squared away and nobody can give us grief about it later." My father patted his shirt pocket for his reading glasses and did not find them. "It's a lot of paper, son." Travis smiled, smooth as butter. "It's nothing. Lawyer stuff. Protects the place. You trust me, don't you?" My father took the pen. Before he signed, the breeze caught the folder's cover and lifted it, and I saw the logo printed on the corner of the top page. It was not a bank. It was not Walt's firm. It was a real estate outfit 2 counties over that handles one kind of transaction and one kind only. They do not protect places. They move them. I heard myself say, louder than I meant to, "Dad, wait." My father looked up, annoyed at the interruption, and Travis closed the folder fast. "It's family business, Meredith. Nothing that concerns you." My father's jaw set. "We'll finish this inside, son." And the moment was gone. A few minutes later at the drink table, I overheard Sandra telling Aunt Lorna, not realising how close I was. "Once it's all signed over, Travis says we'll finally get what we're owed after everything we put up with." Aunt Lorna patted her hand and said it was about time somebody around here was sensible. Signed over. Not inherited, not someday. Signed over now with a real estate company's logo on the paperwork and a husband in a hurry. I needed to see those papers before my father's pen ever touched that page again. I waited for my chance. It came when the cake was cut and the whole crowd drifted to the long table, even Travis, even my father. I told a cousin I needed the bathroom and went in through the kitchen door into the cool dim of the house I grew up in. The folder was on the kitchen table where my father had set it down, next to his glasses and his truck keys. I am not proud of what I did, but I am not sorry either. I opened it. The top page was exactly what I had feared, and worse, a listing agreement, drawn up and ready, naming the homestead, the 80 acres, the barn, all of it. The asking price was printed in bold near the top, and it was low, the kind of low you set when you want a fast sale and do not care what the land is really worth. But that was not the part that stopped my breath. The seller's signature line at the bottom did not say Raymond Frost. It said Travis Frost by power of attorney. I stood in my mother's kitchen and understood the whole machine at last. Travis had already gotten my father to sign a limited power of attorney, probably months ago, dressed up as lawyer stuff that protects the place. Now he was using it to list the farm for sale under his own hand. The signatures he needed today were not to protect anything. They were the last few that let him close. My father thought he was securing a legacy. He was signing away the right to ever stop his son from selling his home. I photographed every page, the listing, the low price, Travis's signature on the seller's line, and closed the folder exactly as I had found it. I did not confront anyone at the party. That is the mistake people expect the disgrace to make. The scene, the tears, the accusation nobody believes. I am not built that way. I went back out, ate a polite piece of cake, said my goodbyes were coming soon, then stepped around the barn where I had a bar of Signal and called Walt Harrove at home on a Sunday. I told him what I had seen, the folder, the real estate firm, the listing agreement signed by Travis under power of attorney. He stopped chewing his own party food. He asked 3 sharp questions, the date on the agreement, the name of the brokerage, whether the price was on it. I answered all 3. There was a long quiet on the line. Then Walt said the thing I already knew but needed to hear from someone with a license. "Meredith, if he's got a valid power of attorney and lists it and finds a buyer, your father could lose that farm in 60 days. And there's not a lot he could do about it once it's in motion, especially if he doesn't even understand what he signed." I leaned against the barn my grandfather built and looked out at the green back 40 and the leaning fence and the live oak. My brother had built a clean, quiet machine to take the homestead, and it was already running. He had thought of everything. Everything except one thing. He did not know the farm could never be sold without first going through me. When I bought that charged-off note and folded it into the trust, the bank's claim on the homestead became mine. The recorded lien securing the full value of the place now named my trust, the one I funded, the one I controlled. My father still held title, still owned the land on paper, but that land carried a lien for everything it was worth, and the lien holder was me. A power of attorney lets you act for the person who granted it. It does not let you hand a clean title when a lien for the property's full value sits in someone else's hands. Travis had built a beautiful key and fitted it carefully into a lock that opened nothing, so I had a choice. I could do nothing loud at all. I could let Travis run his scheme straight into a title search and watch it die on its own, quietly, the way I did everything. The buyer would walk away. Travis would have to explain to a real estate company why he had tried to sell a property he did not own. My father would never even know how close he had come. I could go on being the silent root my mother asked me to be, holding the land in the dark for the 4th generation, letting them call me whatever kept the peace. That was the safe path, the one I had walked for 2 years and was good at it. But I sat down on an overturned bucket in the barn shade and thought about my mother's letter, a letter I had found in a tin box at the back of her bottom drawer 2 years before, after she died, when I was the one who finally went through her dresser because that hard, quiet job always fell to me. In her shaky handwriting, she had written that she knew about the farm, that she had watched my father hide the notices and lean on Travis, and that she was asking me to save it quietly, to let him keep his pride even when he did not deserve it, because the land was not for him, it was for the ones who came after. And then the line I had carried for 2 years. He'll never thank you. Do it anyway. She had asked me to protect the land. She had not asked me to protect the lie. Protecting the land quietly had cost me only money and pride, but protecting the lie year after year had cost me my name in my own family. It had let a good son keep being good in everyone's eyes while he tried to rob the lot of them. I made my decision. Not revenge. Daylight. I came back around the barn meaning to find a quiet way to warn my father one more time. I caught him by the dessert table, away from Travis for once, and kept my voice low and even. Dad, before you sign anything else today, will you let me read it? Just read it. 5 minutes, please. For a second, something flickered across his face, and I let myself hope. Then Travis appeared at his elbow like he had been summoned, and my father's jaw hardened, and whatever door had cracked open swung shut. He looked at me in front of the neighbours, the cousins, his sister, and said it loud enough for all of them. You lost the right to worry about this family the day you let your mother die. The words landed like a slap. The neighbour looked at his shoes. Sandra smiled into her cup, and I stood there in the late gold light with 5 years of being the disgrace pressing down on my shoulders, and I understood there was no quiet way left. I had offered him the truth gently, and he had spat it back in front of witnesses. He wanted me cast out. He wanted it public. Fine. I left the party early before the speeches, and nobody noticed me go, which was fitting. I drove 40 minutes back to Cedar Hollow with my mother's letter on the seat beside me. I let myself into my office, turned on one lamp and printed 3 documents. The first was the recorded deed of trust, filed with the county 2 years back. The second was the bank's payoff letter, proof that the debt that nearly took the farm had been satisfied in full by me, the very spring my father told the neighbours he had handled it himself. The third was a copy of the listing agreement, Travis's signature at the bottom by power of attorney, the asking price printed low and ugly across the top. 3 pieces of paper, the whole truth of 5 years in black and white. I squared the edges, slid them into a plain manila envelope, and wrote 1 line on the front in my steady accountant's hand. Happy Father's Day. I almost did not go back. I sat at my own kitchen table that evening with the envelope in front of me and let myself feel the size of what it would do. But I read my mother's letter 1 more time and let the last line settle where it belonged. He'll never thank you. Do it anyway. She wrote that about saving the land, but I understood now that doing it anyway meant the hard whole of it, not just the easy, quiet part. I picked up the envelope and my keys. It was nearly dusk when I came back up the gravel drive. The core of the family was still there, the citronella candles just lit, the light gone that deep summer gold that makes everything look like a memory while it is still happening. I parked at the far end of the lane and walked up through the cut hay with the envelope in my hand. Travis saw me first and something tightened in his face. At the head of the table, my father was holding court, telling a story about my grandfather. Travis lifted his glass and called out, warm and false, "Hey, before everybody heads out, somebody ought to say something for Dad." My father got slowly to his feet, tall and grey in the candlelight. I stopped a few feet from the table, the envelope down at my side. He lifted his glass and named his blessings around the table, Travis first and longest. "My son, who stayed, who works this land beside me." Then his eyes found me standing just off the end of the table, and the warmth drained out of his face. "Proud of all my children," he said again, slower now, making sure the neighbours heard it too. Except the disgrace sitting at this table. Nobody defended me. Not one of them. In 5 years, not one of them ever had. I stood very still and let the silence finish. Then I did the only thing left that was mine to do. There were no tears from me. Everyone at that table was braced for them. They wanted the disgrace to crumble, to make a scene, to prove the story true. I have never in my life given people the version of me they were rooting for, so I smiled, a real one, almost gentle, which I think unsettled my father more than shouting ever could have. I stepped up to the head of the table, into the candlelight, close enough that he had to look at me, and I set the manila envelope down beside his plate, square and quiet. His eyes dropped to the line on the front, "Happy Father's Day." Then they came back up to mine, narrow, suspicious. "What's this?" Not a question, really. A warning. "Happy Father's Day, Dad," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "Open it when you're ready." That was all. No accusation, no speech. 5 years of it, and I spent fewer words on him than he had just spent on me. I turned and walked back down through the cut hay toward my car. Behind me, I heard my father pick up the envelope. I heard the paper. I did not turn around. The walk to my car felt a mile long. Behind me, the patio had gone quiet in that particular way. A crowd goes quiet when it cannot tell yet whether to be embarrassed or afraid. I heard Travis's voice pitched easy and loud for the benefit of the neighbours. "She's just being dramatic. You know how she gets. Ignore it, Dad, throw it out." But my father did not throw it out. I could feel that without looking. I reached my car and made myself stop for just a second in the last of the light. I thought about my mother under her oak tree and the years of invoices nobody ever saw, and I thought, "This is for you." Behind me, I heard the unmistakable sound of an envelope being torn the rest of the way open, and then the rustle of papers coming out into the candlelight. I heard my father draw a breath, and then that breath catch in his throat as his eyes found the first line of the first page. I opened my car door. The screaming was about to start. My father read the first page, then the second, then the third, and the whole party watched the colour leave his face one shade at a time. The first page was the recorded deed of trust filed with the county 2 years back, the lien on the homestead assigned to my trust, my name as trustee. The second was the bank's payoff letter, proof the debt that should have taken the farm had been satisfied in full, paid by me, the very spring he had told these same neighbours he had handled it himself. The third was the listing agreement, his son's signature at the bottom by power of attorney, the asking price printed low and ugly across the top, the machine that had been quietly selling the family's home right out from under the man making the toast. He understood it all in one terrible rush. The disgrace had saved the farm. The son he had just praised had been trying to sell it. The legacy he had promised the neighbours had not been free and clear for 2 years, and the only thing standing between it and the auctioneer had been her. My father came up out of his chair so fast it went over backward into the grass. "Travis," he said, his voice cracking clean down the middle. "What is this? What did you do?" Travis was already on his feet, hands up, the easy charm gone grey. "Dad, that's not... she's twisting it." But my father was not listening anymore. He was turning the pages over in his shaking hands and roaring now, no words even, just a sound. The sound of a proud man watching every story he had told about himself come apart at once. Down the road a porch light snapped on, and then another, neighbours stepping out to see what was tearing the evening open. I was in my car with the window down when my father finally found words again and screamed my name across the yard. Not the disgrace. My name. Meredith. I started the engine and said the only thing I had left to say, quiet, through the open window into the chaos of the people who had never once defended me. "I didn't come to take anything, Dad. I came to give it back. It was always going to be yours." I just made sure no one could take it from you, including him. I did not stay to watch it burn. I saw enough in the rearview mirror to last me. Travis was backing away from the table with his hands still up, and no one was looking at him the way they used to. Sandra had stepped clear of her husband, an actual foot of evening air between them now. The first crack in a marriage built on what they were owed. Aunt Lorna sat with her mouth open, and for once in 71 years nothing to say. And my father had sat back down in the chair somebody righted for him, the papers loose in his lap, staring at the recorded deed with my name on it like it was written in a language he was only now learning to read. I drove the 40 minutes home with the radio off and my mother's letter on the seat beside me, and somewhere around the county line I realised my hands were finally, after 5 years, not steady at all. They were shaking. I let them. I had earned the right to shake. The listing came down within the week. A title search would have killed it anyway, but Walt made one call to the brokerage and it vanished by Tuesday. Travis had a harder week. The creditors he had been planning to pay with the sale did not disappear just because his scheme did, and without the farm to sell, he had nothing to wave at them. Sandra took the kids to her mother's place in the next county, and last I heard had not come back. Walt and I finished the work I had started 2 years before. This time my father signed willingly, eyes open, and we folded the homestead into a proper family trust, the kind built to outlive all of us. My father gets to live there the rest of his days, exactly as he always has, but it can never be sold out from under the family again by Travis or anyone, because the terms do not allow it and the trustee will not sign it. The trustee is still me. My father called 9 days after Father's Day. He did not apologise, not really. He does not have the equipment for it. But he said my name, Meredith, and not the other word, and asked in a voice I had never heard him use why I never told him. "You wouldn't have let me help if you'd known it was me," I said. He was quiet a long time, because we both knew it was true. Then he asked if I would come out to the farm again sometime, and here is where I drew the line my mother never got to draw for herself. "I'll keep the roof over your head, Dad," I said. For her, and for the land, and for the people who come after. But I won't keep standing in a room that calls me a disgrace. Those are two different things, and you don't get one without the other anymore. He did not argue. For the first time in 5 years, he did not argue. I learned that being the strong one does not mean you owe people your silence forever, and that sometimes the kindest thing and the strongest thing are the same thing, which is to finally let the truth sit down at the table and stay.